27 years after the world watched two young princes walk behind their mother's coffin, one of them would return to her resting place with tears in his eyes and secrets weighing heavy on his heart. The autumn wind carried whispers through the ancient oak trees of Althorpe Estate as Prince Harry approached the small island where Princess Diana lay at peace. Beside him walked Meghan, her hand trembling slightly as she carried white roses, the same flowers Diana had loved so dearly. What they didn't expect was how this private moment of grief would become the turning point that changed everything. As Harry knelt beside his mother's grave for the first time since leaving royal duties behind, the words he spoke into the silence would reveal a truth so powerful it would reshape their entire future. This wasn't just a son visiting his mother's grave, this was a desperate plea for guidance from a man torn between two worlds, carrying the weight of choices that had shattered a 1,000-year-old institution. The security cameras were turned off, the staff had been dismissed. It was just Harry, Meghan, and the ghost of the woman who had predicted this moment, long before anyone else could see it coming. The black Range Rover moved silently through the English countryside, its tinted windows hiding the famous faces inside. Harry gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles white against the leather. In the passenger seat, Meghan watched the rolling hills blur past, her own reflection ghost-like in the window. Neither had spoken for the last 30 miles. The decision to make this journey had come suddenly, triggered by a phone call 3 days earlier. Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, had reached out with news that renovations at Althorpe were complete. The island where Diana rested had been restored, he said, and perhaps it was time for Harry to see it. The timing felt both perfect and terrible. They were in England for Harry's legal battles with the British press, fights that had reopened old wounds about his mother's death. She would have been 63 next month, Harry said suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice carried a weight that made Meghan turn toward him. She reached across the center console and placed her hand over his. "Tell me about her," Meghan said softly. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." Harry's jaw tightened. Even after years of therapy, talking about Diana remained difficult. But something about this journey, about finally bringing Meghan to meet his mother in the only way possible, loosened the words. "She used to sneak into my room at Kensington Palace late at night," he began, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "Not because I'd had nightmares or anything like that. She'd come because she'd had meetings with palace officials, and they'd upset her. She'd sit on my bed and cry, and I didn't understand why then. I was just a kid. I thought adults weren't supposed to cry." The car slowed as they approached a familiar village. Harry had driven this route countless times as a child, usually for Christmas or summer holidays. But this felt different. This felt final somehow. "She'd tell me things," Harry continued. "Things about the family, about the palace, about how trapped she felt. I realize now she was probably talking to herself more than to me, but she'd say things like, 'Promise me you'll choose love over duty, Harry. Promise me you'll choose happiness over tradition.' I thought she was just being dramatic." Meghan squeezed his hand. She understood now why this visit had been postponed for so long. It wasn't just about grief, it was about guilt. Guilt over choices made, bridges burned, and a family fractured in ways Diana had feared but hoped to prevent. As they turned through the gates of Althorpe Estate, memories flooded back. Harry remembered racing through these same gates as an 8-year-old, excited to spend time with his Spencer cousins. He remembered the last time he'd been here for Diana's funeral, walking behind the horse-drawn hearse in a daze of shock and numbness. The estate looked different now. More manicured, more tourist-ready. Diana's childhood home had become a museum, a shrine to her memory that welcomed thousands of visitors each year. But the island remained private, accessible only to family. Charles Spencer met them at the main house. His greeting warm but subdued. He hugged Harry tightly, and Meghan was struck by how much the two men resembled each other. The same red hair, the same piercing blue eyes, the same way of holding sadness in their shoulders. "She's been waiting for you," Charles said simply, leading them toward the lake. "Both of you." The walk to the lake took 15 minutes, following a path lined with ancient oak trees. Meghan noticed how Harry's breathing changed as they got closer. His steps became slower, more deliberate. She could feel his nervousness radiating outward. "The last time I was here," Harry said quietly to Charles, "I couldn't even look at the island. I stood at the edge of the lake during the service, but I kept my eyes on the ground. I wasn't ready to say goodbye." "And now?" Charles asked. Harry stopped walking and looked across the water to the small island in the center of the lake. A simple white memorial stood among the trees, marking where Diana lay. "Now I think I'm ready to say hello." They reached a small wooden dock where a rowboat waited. Charles had arranged for complete privacy. No staff, no security cameras, no witnesses except the three of them. This was family time, sacred time. "I'll wait here," Charles said, understanding instinctively that this moment belonged to Harry and Meghan alone. As Harry helped Meghan into the boat, she noticed his hands were shaking slightly. She carried a bouquet of white roses, Diana's favorite flowers, and a letter she'd written the night before. Words she wanted to say to the mother-in-law she'd never meet, but whose presence she felt constantly in her marriage. The boat glided across the still water, Harry's rowing steady and rhythmic. Neither spoke during the short journey, but Meghan could feel the emotion building in her husband. When they reached the island's small dock, Harry tied the boat carefully, as if delaying the inevitable. "Are you ready?" Meghan asked gently. Harry nodded, but tears were already forming in his eyes. I need her to know that I tried. That I tried to stay. That I tried to make it work. But I couldn't sacrifice my family for the institution. She'd understand that, wouldn't she?" "She'd understand everything," Meghan assured him, taking his hand as they stepped onto the island. The memorial was simple but beautiful, white stones surrounded by carefully tended flowers. Diana's grave marker bore her family name, Diana Frances Spencer, 1961-1997. Below it, words from Mother Teresa, "Life is an opportunity, benefit from it." Harry approached slowly, then suddenly collapsed to his knees beside the grave. All the emotion he'd been holding back for years came pouring out in broken sobs. Meghan knelt beside him, her own tears falling, as she placed the white roses at the base of the memorial. "I'm sorry, Mummy," Harry whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect the family like you wanted me to. I'm sorry I had to choose. I'm sorry for all of it." In that moment, surrounded by ancient trees and the gentle lap of water against the shore, time seemed to stop. Harry had finally come home to his mother, not as a prince or a duke or a public figure, but simply as her son, broken, guilty, and desperate for forgiveness. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves overhead, and for just a moment, both Harry and Meghan felt something shift. As if Diana herself was reaching across the years to touch her son's face, to tell him that love was always the right choice, even when it cost everything. But this was only the beginning of what would prove to be the most emotionally transformative day of Harry's life. The secrets he would reveal to his mother's grave, the promises he would make, and the shocking decision that would follow. None of that had happened yet. The real conversation was about to begin. As Harry's initial tears subsided, he remained kneeling beside Diana's grave. His hand pressed against the cool, white stone. Meghan sat quietly beside him, giving him space to process emotions that had been buried for decades. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of trees, casting dancing shadows across the memorial. "I need to tell her everything," Harry said suddenly, his voice hoarse from crying. "All the things I should have said years ago." He looked up at Meghan, his eyes red but determined. Can you give me a few minutes alone with her? I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like she's here. Really here." Meghan kissed his forehead gently and walked toward the far side of the island, close enough to provide support if needed, but far enough to give Harry the privacy he craved. She sat beneath an ancient willow tree, its branches creating a natural curtain around her. Harry turned back to the grave, placing both palms flat against the memorial stone. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but the words carried the weight of years of suppressed pain. "Mummy, I don't know where to start. There's so much I want to tell you, so much you missed." He paused, collecting himself. "Your grandchildren. God, you would have loved them. Archie has your eyes, you know. That same sparkle when he's being mischievous. And Lilibet, we named her after great-grandmother, but also after you. Her middle name is Diana." The wind rustled through the trees, and Harry felt a warmth on his shoulders that made him look up. For a moment he could have sworn he saw her, not clearly, but just a shimmer in his peripheral vision. The way she used to stand in doorways when she thought no one was watching. "I married someone you would have adored," he continued, glancing toward where Meghan sat. "She's everything you taught me to look for in a partner. She's kind, she stands up for what's right, and she loves me for who I am, not what I represent. But the family. They couldn't see past her skin color, her nationality, her independence. They treated her the same way they treated you." Harry's voice broke again, but he forced himself to continue. This conversation had been building inside him for years. The night before our wedding, I called you. I sat in my old room at Kensington Palace and talked to your portrait until 3 in the morning. I told you I was scared. Not about marrying Meghan. I've never been more certain of anything. I was scared about bringing her into this world that destroyed you. And I was right to be scared. He pulled out his phone and showed the grave a photo of Meghan during her pregnancy with Archie, her hand protectively over her belly. They drove her to the breaking point, just like they did to you. The press, the courtiers, even some family members. She had thoughts. Dark thoughts. About not wanting to be alive anymore. And I realized I was watching history repeat itself. The confession hung in the air like a physical weight. Harry had never spoken these words aloud, not even in therapy. The parallel between his mother's struggles and his wife's had been too painful to acknowledge directly. That's when I knew we had to leave. Not because we wanted to abandon duty or pursue fame or money. The press got that all wrong. We left because staying meant risking Meghan's life, and I couldn't lose someone else I loved to this institution. I couldn't let history repeat itself. Harry stood up slowly, his legs stiff from kneeling. He began pacing in the small space around the grave. His movements agitated as suppressed anger began to surface. But leaving meant hurting Papa and William. It meant disappointing the Queen before she died. It meant breaking apart the family you always wanted us to protect and support each other. So I'm stuck, Mummy. I saved my wife and children, but I lost my father and brother. There's no scenario where everyone I love is safe and happy. He stopped pacing and faced the memorial directly. What would you have done? If you could have taken William and me and left, would you have? Or would you have stayed and tried to change things from the inside, even if it killed you? The question echoed across the water, unanswered, but somehow necessary to ask. Harry had been grappling with this impossible choice for years. Duty versus family, institution versus love, tradition versus survival. William thinks I've betrayed everything you stood for, Harry continued, his voice taking on a bitter edge. He thinks I've abandoned the monarchy when I should have been working to reform it, but he doesn't understand what it was like watching Meghan disappear into herself the way you did. He doesn't remember your midnight visits to my room, the way you'd sob about feeling trapped and misunderstood. Harry walked to the edge of the island and stared across the water. From this distance, he could see Charles Spencer still waiting by the dock, patient and understanding. It struck him that Uncle Charles had also chosen family over royal expectations when he delivered that powerful eulogy at Diana's funeral, directly criticizing the royal family's treatment of his sister. Maybe that's the Spencer way, Harry said, turning back to the grave. Maybe we're just built to choose love over everything else, even when it costs us everything else. He knelt again, this time pulling out a letter from his jacket pocket. It was handwritten, several pages long, and slightly crumpled from being carried around for weeks. I wrote this after our interview with Oprah aired, he said, unfolding the pages. After the backlash, after the family stopped taking my calls, after everything fell apart completely. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment to read it to you. Harry cleared his throat and began reading aloud, his voice stronger now. Dear Mummy, I hope you're proud of the man I've become, even though the path here has been messier than either of us expected. You taught me that the most important thing in life is to follow my heart, even when everyone else thinks I'm making a mistake. You showed me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when that truth makes powerful people uncomfortable. As he read, Harry's voice gained conviction. The words had been written in his darkest moment, but reading them here, in this sacred space, they felt like a declaration of purpose rather than a lament. You always said that I was put on this earth to make a difference, to use my position to help people who don't have a voice. I'm still doing that work, just not in the way anyone expected. I'm showing other people that it's possible to choose mental health over tradition, that it's possible to prioritize your family's well-being over public expectations. Meghan, who had been listening from her spot under the willow tree, felt tears streaming down her face. She had never heard Harry articulate his choices with such clarity and confidence. Usually, when he talked about leaving royal life, there was guilt and regret coloring every word. But here, speaking directly to his mother, he sounded certain. The hardest part isn't the criticism from strangers, Harry continued reading. It's knowing that William and I may never repair our relationship. He sees my leaving as abandonment, but I see his staying as acceptance of a system that nearly destroyed you. We're both trying to honor your memory, but we're doing it in completely opposite ways. Harry folded the letter carefully and placed it at the base of the memorial. weighing it down with a smooth stone from the island shore. I brought Meghan here today because I wanted you to meet her properly, but also because I needed her to understand why I fight so hard to protect our family. This place, your story, our story, it's all connected. And I need her to know that choosing her, choosing us, choosing life outside the institution, it wasn't running away, it was running toward something better. He stood up and called softly to Meghan, who joined him beside the grave. Together, they knelt and arranged the white roses more carefully around the memorial. "What did you tell her?" Meghan asked gently. Harry smiled for the first time since arriving at Althorpe. "I told her about you, about the children, about all the ways we're building the life she would have wanted for us. And I think she approves." As if in response, a gentle breeze swept across the island, carrying with it the sweet scent of the roses, and something else, something that smelled like Diana's favorite perfume, though neither Harry nor Meghan mentioned it aloud. But their emotional journey was far from over. The most shocking revelation, the decision that would change everything about their future, was still to come. As the sun began to set over Althorpe Estate, Harry was about to make a promise to his mother's grave that would surprise even Meghan. As the golden hour light began to fade over Althorpe Estate, Harry and Meghan remained on the island, neither wanting to break the profound connection they both felt to Diana's presence. The emotional weight of the day had created a kind of sacred space around them, a bubble where truth felt possible and healing seemed within reach. Harry walked to the edge of the island again, but this time his posture was different. The defeated, guilty man who had arrived that afternoon was transforming into someone more resolute. Meghan watched this change with a mixture of curiosity and concern, recognizing the look in her husband's eyes, the same expression he wore when making life-altering decisions. "There's something else," Harry said, turning back to the grave. "Something I haven't told anyone, not even Meghan." Meghan's head snapped up in surprise. After years of marriage and extensive couples therapy, she thought they had shared everything. The idea that Harry had been carrying another secret made her heart race with worry. Harry knelt beside the memorial one final time, placing his hand on the cool stone. When he spoke, his voice carried a conviction that seemed to surprise even him. "Mummy, I'm going to fix this. Not just for us, but for everyone who comes after. I'm going to make sure no one else in our family has to choose between love and duty the way we both did." He paused, gathering courage for what came next. "I'm going to write a book, not just about our decision to leave. Everyone expects that. I'm going to write about everything. About you, about what really happened in those final years, about the phone calls you recorded, the letters you wrote, the warnings you gave that everyone ignored." Meghan's breath caught in her throat. In all their discussions about Harry's memoir project, he had always insisted certain family secrets would remain private. The idea that he was considering revealing Diana's most protected confidences was shocking. "I know you documented everything," Harry continued, his voice gaining strength. "Uncle Charles told me about the recordings you made, the detailed diary entries, the letters you wrote to us boys for when we were older. The palace made him promise to keep them private, but you never agreed to that. You wanted your story told truthfully, didn't you?" Harry pulled out his phone and showed a photo to the gravestone. It was an image of a handwritten letter in Diana's distinctive script. "Charles gave me this yesterday. It's the letter you wrote to me for my 40th birthday. You wrote it 3 months before you died." With trembling hands, Harry began to read from his phone screen. "My darling Harry, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer with you, and you've become the man I always knew you could be. I hope by now you understand why I made the choices I did, why I fought so hard against a system that tried to silence me. I hope you've learned that duty without love is just another word for oppression." Meghan moved closer, drawn by the intimacy of Diana's words reaching across decades to guide her son. "I need you to know that everything I did, the interviews, the relationships, the rebellions, was to show you and William that you have choices. The monarchy will try to convince you that you were born into a cage, but you weren't. You were born into a position of influence, and how you use that influence is up to you." Harry's voice broke slightly as he continued reading. "If the institution ever threatens to destroy someone you love the way it nearly destroyed me, don't hesitate. Don't try to reform it from the inside. Don't sacrifice your happiness for their traditions. Choose love every single time, and let history judge whether that was brave or selfish." He lowered the phone, tears streaming down his face. She knew, Meghan. She knew exactly what would happen to us. She wrote this letter like a roadmap for the choices we'd have to make. Meghan was crying now too, understanding for the first time the full weight of Diana's legacy. It wasn't just about charity work and public compassion. It was about a mother's desperate attempt to free her sons from a system she couldn't escape herself. "But there's more," Harry said, pulling out a small recording device. "Charles gave me this too. It's one of the audio recordings she made in 1996, about 6 months before the divorce was finalized. She talks about you in it." "About me?" Meghan whispered, confused. "But she died before we met." Harry smiled through his tears. "Not you specifically, but listen to this." He pressed play, and Diana's voice filled the evening air. Warm, slightly conspiratorial, unmistakably alive despite the years that had passed.
"I know my boys will fall in love someday, and I pray they'll find women who are strong enough to withstand what this family will put them through."
I especially worry about Harry. He has such a tender heart, and he loves so completely. When he finds the right woman, and I hope she'll be brave and independent and unimpressed by titles, the palace will try to break her the way they broke me. Diana's voice continued. "I need Harry to know that if he ever has to choose between protecting his wife and protecting the monarchy, he should choose his wife. Every time, without hesitation. Because love is what changes the world, not institutions. Institutions just maintain the status quo." Harry stopped the recording and looked directly at Meghan. "She was talking about you. 30 years before you were born. She was already giving me permission to choose you." The revelation hung between them like a bridge connecting past and future. Meghan understood now why Harry had fought so fiercely for their relationship. Why he'd been willing to walk away from everything he'd known. It wasn't just about love. It was about fulfilling a promise to his mother that he'd only recently discovered he'd made. "The book," Harry said, turning back to the grave, "will tell this whole story, not to hurt anyone, but to free everyone. To show William that there's another way to honor your memory. To show the world that choosing love over duty isn't weakness, it's evolution." He stood up and took Meghan's hand. "But I wanted to tell you first, here, in this sacred space, because I need your blessing for what comes next."
What happened next surprised even Meghan.
Harry walked to a small bag he'd brought but hadn't opened until now. From it, he pulled out a simple wooden box, old and worn, clearly a family heirloom. "This was yours," he said to the grave. "Charles has been keeping it safe. It contains all the letters you wrote to us, all the recordings you made, all the documentation you gathered about the way the palace really operates behind closed doors." He opened the box carefully, revealing dozens of items, letters, photographs, small recording devices, even what appeared to be official palace documents. "Charles said you made him promise to give this to me when I was ready to handle the truth. He thinks that time is now." Meghan stared at the contents of the box in amazement. These weren't just family mementos. They were historical documents that could reshape public understanding of the royal family's treatment of Diana. "I'm going to use all of this," Harry said firmly. "Every letter, every recording, every piece of evidence you gathered. Not to destroy the monarchy, that's not what you would have wanted, but to show them that change is possible, that they can choose to evolve before another tragedy happens." He knelt one final time and placed his hand on the memorial stone. "I promise you, Mummy, I'm going to tell your real story. Not the sanitized version, not the victim narrative, but the truth about a woman who was far braver and more strategic than anyone gave her credit for. And I'm going to use that truth to build something better for Archie and Lilibet and any other children who are born into this family." As if in response to his words, the evening breeze picked up again, stronger this time, rustling the trees around the island with a sound like applause. Both Harry and Meghan felt something shift in the air around them, not just emotionally, but physically, as if Diana herself was giving her approval to the plan. "There's one more thing," Harry said, pulling out a final item from the box, a small leather-bound journal, your diary from 1996, the year you decided to fight back instead of just surviving. "I want to read something you wrote 3 weeks before you died." He opened to a bookmarked page and read aloud. "I've decided I won't be remembered as a victim. If something happens to me, I want my boys to know I died fighting for their freedom to choose their own paths. The greatest gift I can give them isn't a title or wealth or position. It's the knowledge that they are not trapped by the circumstances of their birth." Harry closed the journal and looked at Meghan with a determination she'd never seen before. She didn't die in vain if her story helps us build something better. And I think that's exactly what she was hoping for. As the sun set completely over Althorpe Estate, Harry and Meghan gathered the white roses and prepared to leave the island. But both knew this wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning. The secrets revealed at Diana's grave would soon reshape not just their family but the entire royal institution. The book Harry promised to write would become one of the most consequential royal memoirs in history, not because of what it revealed about the present, but because of how it used the past to illuminate a path forward. And it all started with the son finally finding the courage to hear his mother's voice, preserved in recordings and letters, guiding him toward choices she'd hoped he'd be brave enough to make. As their boat glided back across the lake toward Charles Spencer, both Harry and Meghan understood they were returning to the world as different people than when they'd arrived. They carried with them not just memories of an emotional afternoon, but a mission that would define the rest of their lives. Diana's greatest gift to her son wasn't her title or her charity work or even her love. It was her roadmap for choosing love over duty, for prioritizing human happiness over institutional expectations, and for having the courage to tell the truth even when that truth made powerful people uncomfortable. The visit to her grave had given Harry something he'd been searching for since he was 12 years old: his mother's explicit permission to choose happiness, and the tools to help others make the same choice.